my interest in the industry, and I'm pretty open about this. I lean libertarian. I don't drink. I don't use recreational drugs. But
do you consider cannabis a recreational drug?
Sure.
So do you use cannabis?
I do not.
So have you ever?
I have never used cannabis, and I almost hesitate to say that because people don't believe me, but it's the truth. It's
funny because we've definitely hit a culture change where the more awkward laugh is, no, I actually haven't, as
right.
opposed to, I've smoked weed.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, I have no issue with it. I mean, I'm in the business. I would say it if I did, but it's
so why not? Why haven't you?
The reason, well, I don't drink. I don't use any recreational drugs, and I stopped. I stopped drinking shortly after my mother passed away when I was in high school. And
how old were you?
I was 17.
And what happened?
For me, my choice to stop drinking was really to kind of focus on my own life. I mean, I experimented with alcohol, and it was. But for me, there's a history on my mother's side of the family of depression and things like that. It was really, if I want to live the best life I can, I've got to take. For me personally, I don't use any substances.
So how old were you when you quit drinking?
I was 18.
I mean, that takes a tremendous amount of discipline because there's that allure, like just try something.
Sure.
I mean, it could be fun, and yet you've passed it up. I mean, it doesn't sound like you're regretting it.
No, not at all. No, and this is the way I look at it: is that, and this is not, and listen, I'm economically, I have an economic interest in this industry, so take it for what it's worth. But I think I'm being honest when I say this. Is that, I mean, my father. My father loves wine. He collects wine. My father that's great. There are some people, though, that, just like diabetes, that can't, they have a different reaction, physiological, psychological reaction to things like alcohol, things, to cannabis that is different from the average person. And it's... life in general is far more complex, I think, than we want to admit it is. I mean, I know people that use cannabis and couldn't be more efficient or productive. I'm thinking of one individual who's actually in the industry, uses cannabis semi-regularly. He's done 7 Ironman competitions. I think he gets up at 4 a.m., goes to bed at 11, and runs an absolutely incredibly successful business and has a great family life. I know other people, and I'm sure you do too, that smoke cannabis all day and accomplish nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I think alcohol is the one that people don't have real conversations about. And I think that most people that are energetic and high energy and like to get things done also do that same thing when they start doing stuff like drinking alcohol. I mean, I think for me, that would be a great example. And then the next day, it's not like I threw up everywhere and I lost control and said insane things. No, I wake up the next day and my day is 20% as valuable as it could be. And when you're in your 20s, it's okay to throw off a couple 20% days. You get into your 30s, you lose a day, you lose a Sunday. That's either time with your family that you could have really enjoyed, or it's time that you could have been getting after it. And it's interesting because alcohol is one of those things that I think most people, even if they don't have a chemical dependence on it, the social dependence on it is so strong that they don't even consider that they could actually live life without it. And so it's astounding to me that since you were 18, you've not had that dragging on your shoulder.
Well, I appreciate that. It's, what can I say? I'm fortunate. And it was also, and I think part of it is because it happened. I didn't have this because it happened when I was 18. It stopped when I was 18. I didn't have this history, like 20-year history of, I didn't go to bars. I mean, I was 18 years old. I went to a Catholic boys' high school. I wasn't going to bars or anything like that. I didn't have that social experience, social conditioning. This is how I socialize. And, so when you think about it, I guess I started experimenting with alcohol when I was 14. And by 18, I haven't had a drink since I was 18 years old. So I don't have. It's this tiny window.
I mean, it's amazing. And I think that probably speaks to why, you are a difficult guy to get on the podcast because you are one of the busiest human beings I know. You're not even always in St. Louis.
No.
You're running around doing all kinds of things.
Yeah.
What do you do with all this time that you have that's productive?
So I spend, in terms of my working day, I've got a new company with a partner he's out of Dallas, Texas. He's been a very, very successful entrepreneur, has a couple of IPOs himself. And we've got a business where we provide access to debt capital for operators in the cannabis industry. And because
what is debt capital?
Like traditional bank financing. So the equity versus debt capital, most of the industry now is in the private sector. Or privately held companies rather, is most of the capital in that now is equity capital. So if you want to start a vertically integrated cannabis operation in Los Angeles, California, and so you've got a cultivation, manufacturing, and dispensary. And you're going to say that's going to cost me, I'm just making up numbers here, that's going to cost me $10 million. You can't go to, you can't go to Wells Fargo and say, hey, I need...
Yeah, banks won't touch it.
Yeah,
They won't touch it. And so you have figured out... So this is interesting because banks, they know that the opportunity is there. When was the last time a completely new industry just rolled into the world where demand was... It's like discovering Apple computers or just computers in general and then saying... Well, the banking rules aren't clear, so none of the banks are going to do that. So all of that capital that is tied up in banks, how many people are out there doing what you guys are doing? There
are some, but there's not a ton. And the issue, the big is finding the source of the capital and then connecting them with the right people. Because this is a fascinating industry in the sense that it's one of the oldest products in the world that people have used on a regular basis that hasn't been effectively branded yet. And it's in this weird sort of legal state. I think it's, basically if you go to any business school or any, public policy institution, there's a path towards, a legalization for cannabis. I don't know what exactly that's going to look like. We can get into that later, but
thanks for watching this podcast short. You can find the rest of the interview on my channel. If you like this video, I hope you'll hit the like button and consider subscribing. I release a new interview with an interesting person every Wednesday morning.